All right, Kevin back with you for another episode of the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And Matt, it just dawned on me, I did not ask you how to pronounce your last name. It's
You
how
know
did
what?
you
People have been getting it wrong my entire life, so that's okay. I always say, yeah, everything is silent.
every
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 letter is silent, but it's Theriault, rhymes with stereo.
oh interesting.
Yeah,
Theriault. I would have never got that for sure.
right. Nobody ever does. The
Yeah.
French, they put a lot of extra consonants in there that need to be there.
Yeah, I'm glad I asked. I'm glad I asked. So, and now because you said stereo, I will always remember that too. I will always remember Matt Terrio and rhymes with stereo. and,
Yep. You know what? The last person that said that, I was caddying for my son. He was just started playing golf and he entered his first tournaments and the guy that at the starter that they now stepping on the first tee from Las Vegas, Nevada. And he said, so they'll introduce the person's name, right? And he said, how do you pronounce the last name? And I said, well, stereo rhymes with, or it's Terrio rhymes with stereo. And he goes, oh, I'll never forget that.
uh-huh.
And so then he
Yeah.
goes, on the first tee from Las Vegas, Nevada, Matt Theriault. And I was like, that does not rhyme with stereo.
About a year ago, I interviewed this guy, Dan Hyritz, for
Mhm.
the podcast. And he had such a unique spelling for his name, too. And when, just like you, he was like, yeah, Kevin, he said, you'll never guess it by looking at the spelling, but it's Hyritz. It rhymes with pirates. And I'm like, same deal. I've always remembered it now,
Mhm.
so, so, well, I'll
That's
tell you,
funny.
this is so cool how you and I got connected because you have a PR person,
Mhm.
and your PR person reached out to me asking if I would be interested in doing an interview with you for the $1 Million Relationships podcast. And after receiving that message from them, I just started looking around on the internet and stuff.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I had found this interview that you had done with Garrett Gunderson.
Mhm.
And as soon as I saw that, I'm like, oh, I might not know Matt, but man, if Matt's hanging out with my buddy Garrett, I've known Garrett for, she's, I don't know, 12, 13 years. And,
Mhm.
and, and so I was immediately sold. As soon as I saw that interview with you and Garrett, I was like, okay, I'm down for this. And what an amazing testament to the power of relationships, which of course is what this podcast is all about.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
and so you and I, we got to connect earlier, and then we made a time to do this interview, and I'm really stoked for this, Matt. I am really stoked
Totally.
to have this conversation
Totally.
today.
Yeah, Garrett is a great guy. I haven't talked to him in a while, and that interview was a while ago.
Yeah, it was,
But
yeah.
I'm just always attracted to out of the box thinkers and the people that really challenge everyone's sacred cows because we've all been sold, our entire life this bowl of goods and some good, some not. But
Yep,
just because
yep.
it's in the bowl, everyone assumes it's good. And I like how Garrett pushes the boundaries on that stuff.
Yeah, for sure, for
Yeah.
sure. Well, let's start off, Matt. But I just want to turn it over to you so we can set some context and let the listeners know a little bit about who you are. So let's start, have you share like, kind of what you do, who you serve, what inspires you most about the work you guys are doing, and whatever you feel led to share in that regard. And we'll just kind
Hmm.
of, we'll start there.
Sure. Yeah. When I guess I can probably how I got here, because when I tell people I'm in real estate, they think I'm a real estate agent. And
Okay.
then if I tell them I'm a real estate investor, then they think I travel the country and sell training programs. And it's like, so there's always like this thing. I think kind of maybe my backstory, how I got here
Okay.
is pretty unique in the sense that, when I got out of the Marine Corps, I spent the next 15 years of my life in the music business and I did really well for myself. And strangely, like it's not aging well, but I'd always aspired to hit the likes or the heights of Puff Daddy. And
Okay.
his story is not ending very well. But
No,
so
it's not. It's not.
is not. But I was totally fascinated with that and was pursuing that and was kind of on my way. I had a small little hip hop label. We had major label distribution with EMI. We had global distribution. And then this little thing called the digital download came along,
Yep.
and it just changed the way that the whole world consumes music. Now, all of a sudden, it was free, you know. it seems like, walking into a music store to go through the racks and look for your favorite CD or your favorite album, that seems just so long ago.
Yeah,
That my son
yeah,
wasn't even born. He doesn't even know what a CD is. And so, but yeah, everything changed and that turned the whole industry upside down. And at the age of 34, I was like, within 6 months, I was bankrupt. It
wow,
happened that fast. And, in hindsight, it's very clear what happened. But at the time it was happening, it was not clear.
yeah,
Like I had no clue. I mean, social media was not what it is today, and news and stories did not circulate the globe as quickly as they do now. And it really caught me off guard. I had no idea. And so, the wife wasn't too happy that the money stopped.
yep.
And then after she
Funny how that
left,
works. They like
yep,
security, you know.
yeah, they do. They're funny that way. Um, but yeah, so then I got left with all of her debt and my debt and the record label's debt, and then I had, I was kind of on the hook for future royalties that was amounting to the millions. And I was like, well, I can't pay anything if I don't sell anything.
Yeah.
And so I had to file bankruptcy in 2001 and basically just start life over again.
Wow. Wow.
And that's all I'd ever known. I didn't know how to do anything else. So when I went out into the job world, it was a very rude awakening as far as what I was qualified for or what people thought I was qualified for. Because I didn't have any official credentials and there wasn't a whole lot of demand for, an unemployed music entrepreneur. And so I went and just started like, how am I going to feed myself? So I went to, I went to go look at selling insurance and selling cars, like, because really sales is the only thing that can make a decent living if you don't have like the degree and everything, it seemed like at the time. And I went through a number of little multi-level marketing companies and, you know, ended up bagging groceries. And I was doing that at the age of 34, and that was like a really, really low point in my life, probably the lowest. Yeah, definitely the lowest. Because certainly, I mean, when you've risen and fallen, um, I think it's better to have never risen, right? The contrast is so big.
Mhm.
And so I was there about 6 months and just having the world's biggest pity party. And the most unlikely mentor, the grocery store manager, who was also 34 years old. We were the same age, but he'd been pushing carts there since he was 16 years old. He was 2 years away from his quote unquote retirement. He was going to be able to pull 70% of his pension at that point. He was that much vested. And he would talk about it. And I was just like looking at him, God, 2 years and you're done. And I'm just getting started. And that was really just tough. But he had said, yeah, Matt, but look what I did along the way. As I've been able to purchase a couple apartment buildings. And these apartment buildings pay me more cash flow than what my pension is going to pay me. And then he said these words to me, and it launched me in a whole new stratosphere. And didn't know it exactly at the time, but in hindsight, certainly did when he said, real estate, it's the final frontier where the average person has a legitimate shot at creating real wealth.
Mhm.
And I was
Mhm.
like, wow, at that moment, I was feeling far below average. So I was like,
Mhm.
who am I to aspire to be average? I really missed my money. And so that's kind of how this whole real estate thing started, because I really just got in it because I thought I could, recreate my life financial status that I had been before.
Mhm. Yeah.
I found
Yeah.
this little book. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Have you heard of this book?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Robert Kiyosaki.
Yeah, yeah. I've had him on my show a couple of times, so it's been great to meet him and come full circle and share my testimony about his book to him. But that book, it introduced me to two concepts that I'd never really learned before or heard of before. And one was a new definition of wealth,
Okay.
right? Because I really thought wealth was having a lot of money in the bank. That's what it seemed to be, and that's all I strived to do when I was in the music business was just stack your chips, stack your paper, you know, and get it as high as you can. And then his whole definition was, you just need enough money coming in each month to cover your monthly bills. That money coming in wasn't necessarily dependent on your direct involvement.
Yeah.
So it was kind of my first introduction. The second thing would have been passive income. And I speak English. I can take the word passive, I can take the word income, I can put them together and I can kind of figure out what it means. But to be taught it as an intention of something to actually pursue
Yes.
was like groundbreaking to me.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, I never want to be bagging groceries again. So in 3.5 years, I was able to get my passive income through real estate to exceed my monthly expenses. And I wasn't rich by any means, but I was free.
Yeah.
And
I
having
mean, I'm
experienced,
thinking about that. What a massive accomplishment that really is, though. That
mm-hmm,
to your income, your passive income exceeds. You're right. You were free. You were
yep,
free.
yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so now having experienced both definitions of wealth, I really like the freedom much, much better,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And you know, when people start asking me that knew me that I was bagging groceries and now I'm playing golf on a Tuesday while they had to go to work, they're like, "What in the hell happened? How did you do this?" And I was like, "Oh, I just kind of did this and this, and gosh, can I take you to lunch and start picking your brain? Can I take you to dinner? Can we have drinks? Can we have coffee?" And so I did a lot of those,
Uh-huh.
and that just kind of evolved into teaching because I started thinking like, what if in high school, like they just swapped out that little book, Catcher in the Rye, and they put Rich Dad Poor Dad in its place?
Right.
Like, how much of an impact would that have on society and have on people and the way that they think and the way that they pursue what they think they want? I mean, because everybody aspires to some sort of financial freedom in some degree. We just live in a society that that makes life better.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I was like, okay. I mean, if it wasn't from this weird set of circumstances, I would have never found that book, right? If the music industry was still going, I doubt I'd know who Robert Kiyosaki was,
Sure. Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
because and so I was like, well, how many other people are there out there like me, right? So I've been able to do this for myself. And so I wrote a book about it, about recreating myself. Then I started teaching what I was doing, and it's evolved to where here I am. Gosh, I started a podcast in 2009. So this is our 15th year. And
Okay.
that was a
That's
day
some
when,
dang longevity right there, Matt.
yeah, we're the longest running real estate investing podcast on the interwebs. And yeah,
Congratulations, man.
I remember I
Just
had the
I heard
10.
this thing that most podcasts never do more than 10 episodes, maybe
Oh
even
yeah,
less than
we
that.
we passed 10. We did pass 10. Um, but yeah, so that's where I am today. And so now I'm actively investing. My wife runs what we call a turnkey operation. So
Okay.
I teach people more of the hands-on how to do it. And then she has a branch of our business where she does it for them. So a busy professional come in, they want real estate, but they don't really have the desire or the or the capacity to do the work themselves. So they hire her to do it for them. And then she builds passive income portfolios for them. And so that's what we do today. And while we run and still build our own portfolio. So that's where we're at.
That is awesome. And so you just kind of teach what you do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Imagine that.
Right. It's funny. I went to a seminar. This was a while ago, and this was right after I had escaped the rat race, quote unquote. And I was looking to ways to diversify now my passive income because I was solely dependent on the real estate passive income. And we went to this seminar, and this guy said, which people they get rich because they learn how to do one thing really well, and then they create multiple streams of income from that
Yeah.
knowledge.
Yeah.
And that was his suggestion was the most logical place and easiest place for people to start is be some sort of consultant or tutor or, be an educator or a trainer. And that's how that happened. Teach what you know.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, okay. So now that we've got a little bit of context set and people have a
Mm-hmm.
little bit of idea of who Matt Theriault is, I got that. Matt Theriault.
It's Theriault, yes.
Theriault.
The H is silent
The
too.
H is silent.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to switch gears just a little bit, and I'm going to reiterate the question for the benefit of our listeners. So, Matt, have you ever been introduced to a person or persons who completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons? And Matt, I'm just really excited to hear your story and your experience around this topic of relationships.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The grocery store manager certainly,
Okay.
he
Okay.
planted an idea. Like he
Yeah.
didn't, and we're not in touch today, but Clarence, he certainly planted an idea and it set me off in a new direction. If he didn't plant that idea, I might still be bagging groceries. Who knows? The second person would be I met one person in one of the multi-level marketing organizations that I was in,
Okay.
and I got to really see what work looked like.
All right.
Like like picking up the phone and dialing and inviting and then making presentations and closing and following up and collecting the money and building an organization. And that was that served me ever since to this day. I mean, I'm not in any sort of multi-level marketing thing, but I think the skills that you learn inside of those organizations are invaluable.
Totally.
You
Totally.
can make a living on selling, $9 a month shakes. Like you're a hustler,
Uh-huh.
like
Yep.
you figured it out. And so that's definitely the second person. And without those two people, yeah, I don't know. Certainly wouldn't be where I am today.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. My parents got involved in Amway in 1975
Mm,
when I was
mm-hmm,
10 years old. And
mm-hmm.
so I was raised around that environment and stuff.
Yep, yep.
And I'll tell you, you know what? It's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing being exposed to all that for my years growing up and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, heck, that's that. I mean, I knew MLM wasn't the thing for me, but I knew it by the time I was in high school. I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I knew that.
Right,
I
right.
wanted to do things on my own. You
Yep.
know, and
The one thing about MLM was nice, and if anyone was ever to look and analyze an MLM in hindsight, because now I've been through so many of them, I would look at something like an Amway where you can actually make a living selling the product,
uh-huh.
right? Where your living isn't entirely dependent on recruiting new people to recruit new people,
Yeah, yeah,
right? If it's a good product and a good service, then that's great. And then the recruiting aspect is just a big fat bonus. But
yeah.
I'm sure that's why they've been around so long.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, man, look at us now. I mean, I don't know about you, but I would imagine that you believe pretty heavily in what you're selling because of your own experience with it, just as
Mhm.
I do with what I do.
Yep.
And so, I don't even look at what I'm doing as selling. I mean, really, most entrepreneurs, I'm completely useless to. And so when I'm having conversations with people that might be interested in getting involved in what I have to offer, it's really for me, it's an interview process to make sure that they're the right kind of person and they have the assets already in place in order to even let me be valuable to them.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
having had that experience, it makes it's a whole different experience, I would imagine, the way that you and I do selling versus the way that a lot of other people do selling, which, there's a whole lot of kind of high pressure kind of stuff out there and all that. And
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm the most laid back guy you'd ever meet. It's
Yep.
almost like a takeaway.
Right, totally. I think there's a distinction between salesperson and an ambassador,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And someone who's a product of the product is they eventually would become an ambassador. That's just a natural progression. And if you're a product of the product and you're living that life, then you can't help but sell. I
Yeah.
mean, you just by you being you, people are attracted to that.
That's
So I
right.
can see that's why
That's
people
right.
are attracted to you.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So if you look at these relationships that you have talked about, well, first of all, let me make sure that was there anybody else you wanted to talk about in honor, or I want to make
Yeah, so there's one more who I
sure. Okay.
met actually while I was selling records. So this was a little bit before I got into real estate, and we kind of
Okay.
separated and we came back together, and he's been like my best friend, really. My best friend and just a great mentor. So yeah, there's that third person. So I met him before the real estate thing happened, but we came back together after the fact, and his entrepreneurial mind has had a significant impact on what I do today.
Okay. Okay. And so tell us a little bit about that relationship. How did you guys meet? And you met
Mhm.
long before you were even in real estate, when you were in the music business. So tell us a little bit
Yeah.
about that.
So it was very early because I would go to there was a record pressing plant in Los Angeles called Rainbow Records.
Okay.
I would go there and I'd print up my records. I'd put them literally in the trunk of my car, and I would drive from music store to music store to music store, putting my records on consignment in the store.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And I had a little path from Los Angeles up the coast to San Francisco. And then I'd come back down south inland all through San Bernardino, Riverside. And then I'll hit all the way down to San Diego and then come
Okay.
back up to the coast again. So I did that little route, and I did that route once a week for a couple years.
Wow.
by the time I'd go around again, then I'd go and collect the money from what had sold. I'd replenish the stock and just kind of go around and around. So I did that. And I had gotten a call one day because I was selling maybe 5 or 10 units per store. So it
Okay.
wasn't a lot of money. So it was a lot of work. And I got a call one day from this guy. His name's Bill Barron, and amazing guy. And he had said, "Hey, this record is actually working pretty well for us up here, and I heard all about it. Can I get a bunch?" And I was like, "Sure. How many you want? 30, 40?" He said, "No, send me 1,000."
Wow.
And I was like, exactly. That was my like, wow. It take me, 2 loops around my thing, 2 weeks to sell 1,000 records.
Okay. Okay. And now
So
you're
that was the
talking to one guy who
one
wants
guy.
to sell.
Yes. Yep. And so that was like what really opened up our relationship, and just everything I made, he loved, and he just bought a bunch and he paid me chunks of cash. And so I didn't have to do all the driving anymore because he serviced all those stores, and it was just awesome. So then, as the music industry kind of went in its haywired way, we both went off in different directions, and we lost touch. And it turned back, and we met. And I think, where did we meet? We were like at a mastermind, I think. And he became an entrepreneur coach. And I was there as a real estate investing coach. And I was like, wow, you're doing this too? Like we both kind of merged that way. But he was much further along than I was.
Uh-huh.
And I've just really been able to see, I guess, what systems look like and accountability looks like, and tracking and measuring and doing all that boring stuff that builds businesses, when I was really focused on all the exciting, flashy stuff that builds businesses. So when I
Yeah.
was able to put that into what I was doing, and match that up with the brand and everything, that's where that relationship had a huge impact. And now we're just like the best of friends.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Wow, it's interesting. I don't know Bill personally, but I've definitely heard of his name. And didn't he used to be partners with a guy that was her name Marissa or Melissa or something? Uh, and maybe
Maybe,
I'm thinking of the wrong guy. Even I don't know. I don't
maybe he's gone through a few different evolutions,
know.
right?
Okay. Okay.
And he's
Okay.
had some different phases in his life. So those were several years that we just weren't in touch. So I'm not
Okay.
totally sure on
Okay.
that.
So if you look at these relationships, and I want you to look at an experience where you personally,
Mhm.
uh, where you got to make a really substantial impact, where even you might have been surprised and going like, wow, that was amazing. It just makes you really proud of it. And at the same time, that that would have never happened if not for the relationship that you had with any of these people that you've talked about. I'm sure you come up with lots of examples, but what is just one example that just comes top of mind for you?
So a relationship like where I'm on the other end is what you're asking,
Yes. Yeah.
right? Okay, I understand. Yeah, there's been several of those. The most recent one was actually they happened almost back to back. Two happened back to back. The middle of
You
last
can share both if you want.
Yeah,
So,
sure. The middle of last year, I'd gotten a call from a client of mine who we've been working together for maybe 3 years or so.
okay.
And his time with me had expired, right? But I still leave the phone on for my favorite people. And the time expired, and he called me and said, "Hey Matt, I was just wondering, like, how much would you charge me to come down and just spend the day with you?" And I was like, "You don't need to charge me. Like, what day do you want to come down? I mean, I'm not gonna come down." He said, "Well, I can come down this day." I said, "Perfect." I blocked it off on the calendar. He showed up. We sat in our my conference room, and he said, "Okay, so here's the deal. Is I have about a $500,000 in the bank. I've got these 5 fix and flips going on. I've got I've got 12 income properties going on right now. And I just wanted to know, is it okay now if I quit my day job?" Right. And I was like, where's the doubt? Why did you need my validation and proof? You've got everything going for you, and you're going really strong. He goes, "Well, my wife Emily wanted me to actually come here and see the look on your face when I asked the question." Which I thought was so funny. I was like, "Yes, you have my blessing. You can quit your day job. I think you're going to be just fine." And then we proceeded the rest of the day, and we went and did what we do in Vegas and had a blast. So we had
That's
maybe
awesome.
literally 10 minutes of work.
Uh-huh.
And so that was something like that can make me emotional if I think about it too much, right? And then maybe a week later, I just got a random phone call from the same guy who just called me to say thanks for that, for the same type of thing. And so watching that trickle down and me being the catalyst for that for other people is I don't know, it's something I mean, I got into teaching and education to create an additional stream of income.
Yeah.
Nobody told me about this part, right?
Yeah.
This is really like been the amazing part of it. And you hear people say, I'm just doing it because I want to make a difference in people's lives. And I've grown up hearing people say stuff like that. I was like, oh, hogwash, you're doing it for the money. But then when you actually make a difference in someone's life, then you're like,
It's
oh,
huge.
maybe this is what they were talking about, because
Yeah.
it feels really good. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I've experienced that, and I know exactly what you're talking about, because it does. It feels amazing,
Mm-hmm.
and I would imagine, Matt, it's got you thinking like, man, I just want to affect and cause so much more of that,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
because it does, it just makes you feel good, it jazzes you, it gets you stoked, and it's like, yep, let's do more of that. Let's do more of
Yep.
that, and because yeah, the money's great, but once once you've got the money coming in, and we've got our own needs met and we have excess, making more money ceases to be what inspires us. Now, until we got our needs met, and maybe like in your situation where you're teaching people, how to replace or cover all their expenses with passive income and stuff, and once that's done and stuff, you get to a point where like more money is not what inspires you. More revenue is not what inspires you. It's the other stuff. It's the making
Mm-hmm.
a difference. It's the spending time with cool people that we just enjoy spending time with. Like you said, the guy that came over, you spent 10 minutes together. It's like, now, well, let's go hang out and have fun for the day, because you just like hanging out with each other,
Right. For sure.
and
For sure.
that's what it's all about. So,
Yep. I would say to take it even a level deeper would be, I didn't ever really had a relationship with my dad.
okay.
And
Okay.
now I have a 13-year-old son, and we do all kinds of stuff together, right? And that he definitely has a relationship with me, and I definitely have a relationship with him.
Yeah.
So that has all allowed me to do that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw this video on Facebook just this morning.
Mhm.
This this guy had bought a car, had got a car for his dad, but it wasn't just any old car. When in 1983 was when he was born, and his dad at the time had a '67 Camaro that he
Mhm.
sold so that they could get the money to now support this new baby that they had and stuff. And his dad would often talk about, I sold the Camaro to pay for diapers,
Mhm.
and so without knowing, without letting his dad know or anything, he had bought a '67 Camaro several years ago and restored the whole dang thing. And
Mhm.
just this more, I don't know, it must have been like recently, like probably in the last week or so, they had this get together with the family and all this, and they gave him this fully restored '67 Camaro that was the same color, same everything that
Mhm.
his dad had. And it was just so cool just
Yeah.
to see the dad's response and all that. I mean, he was
Right.
just completely like, wow, And
I'm didn't even see the video, and I'm getting emotional hearing you retell the story.
well,
Like
and
that.
how cool is it that we can do stuff like that? That we have resources that we can, I mean, I was talking with a gal that I know this morning that her mom just had a stroke this last week and stuff,
Hmm.
and so she was telling me, she goes, Kevin, I know that thing that we were going to do together. She goes, man, I just got to put it off, and I feel so bad. I'm like, are you kidding me? You need to feel bad. I'm like, you got to take care of what's. I said, your mom. Take care of your mom. Take care of that. I was like, you don't
Yeah.
apologize to me. I'm like, we can do our
Hmm.
thing whenever. You be there for your mom right now, and that, that I think a lot of entrepreneurs, we get wrapped up in the hustle and grind. We could, and we kind of lose track of what's really important and stuff, which is the relationships, and I
Hmm.
have seen it so many times where when entrepreneurs connect and do so on just a real, meaningful level, and they make a real connection. Gee, many Christmas, Matt, the business, it comes so damn easy. The business is easy when we got the connection, you know?
Mhm.
And it's just, and like, I want to thank you for just taking the time to have this conversation and share some of your experience around relationships here, because I have long believed that as entrepreneurs, relationships are our most valuable asset. Everything else stems from that.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so for anybody that's kind of listening to this and thinking, man, Kev, I really like Matt. I like Matt. I like what he stands for. I like how he shows up. And maybe there's even some people thinking like, you know what, man, this passive income thing, I'm curious about that. How can they find out more? Do we got any resources, any websites that we can
Well,
share with them?
sure. I mean, but that obviously they like podcasts, so you can listen to the Epic Real Estate Investing podcast.
Okay.
All right. And if you go to epicrealestateinvesting.com, that'll take you straight to the Apple's podcast page.
Okay.
And
Perfect.
then I just finished my flagship book, Escape. So that's at myescapebook.com.
Right.
Very much in the spirit of what Garrett Gunderson does, crushing conventional wisdom with alternative vehicles. And so I always say it's a really a money book disguised as a real estate book, right? That's
Okay.
just, but and then epicrealestate.com is just our home base, our main website. So those are three different places that you could learn more and engage.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, I'll make sure we include that with the show notes and stuff. And Matt, any last thing you feel led to share before we call it a wrap?
You know, Kevin, it's been a pleasure meeting you. And haven't met too many people in the world like you that we click right when we first meet. And I can already tell you're such a giving soul and a great nature. And I think people that get to listen to your podcast and be around you are very, very fortunate. So thanks for having me on the show. I really am honored and blessed.
Absolutely. My pleasure, my honor, and thank you.
Hmm